Hello, guys.
Welcome back to
The Morgue. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Mal,
And my name's Hannah.
and welcome back to the Morgue. How are you doing today, Hannah?
I'm good. How are you?
I am so exhausted, but
Yeah.
I am here. I am great. I had a really weird dream last night. Do you want to hear about it real quick?
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually woke up in a sweat because of this dream. So I had a dream that I was at my house with my mom, right?
Right.
And we were just chilling, relaxing, having a good time, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I see that it gets dark outside, right?
Oh.
And I'm like, what is that? Why is it so dark outside? So I go over to the window. Tell me why there is a freaking alien spaceship outside.
Huh?
I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Independence Day with Will Smith. It's a fire movie, 10 out of 10 recommend. Um, it was this big ass ship that covered the sky, right?
I thought you were gonna say it had something to do with Candyman. 'Cause my
No, it
dream
doesn't
did.
even have anything to do with Candyman is the thing. It was just this big ass ship, right? It covered half the sky. A freaking smaller ship comes out, and for some reason I can see downtown from my house in this dream, and this small spaceship goes and starts setting shit on fire and exploding shit. And I think it's because everyone's been talking about how the government said that there's aliens around, which no fucking shit. We are not the only intelligent species out here. But I think because of that, and I've been seeing so many memes and stuff about it, my mind was just hey, have a scary dream about aliens, yo.
That's so funny. I had a dream that had to do with Candyman,
Tell
but
me,
it
tell
was just
me.
it was very vague. I barely remember any of it. I just know there was candy with razor blades in it,
Oh
and that
no.
I was looking in the mirror and saying it, and he appeared behind me. But that's all I can really remember.
That that's scary, dude. I remember being little and watching this movie. I probably watched this when I was maybe 5 or 6. I was super young. And I remember having terrible nightmares about
I
this.
could not have watched that when I was 5.
Oh yeah, no, my parents, I'll say it again. I said it a million times. I say it again. My parents loved me a lot. But they were just like, you know what? If our kids wants to watch scary movies, they can watch scary movies. And they wouldn't expose us to essaying and stuff like that. Nothing like that. They would always watch the movies beforehand, but if it was a little scary, they were like, "You know what? Let them kids be curious about these scary movies. It's just fine." And guess what? I grew up just fine. I remember my mom would be like, "My child's going to grow up to be a serial killer." And I'm like, "No, I just really like horror."
And now here you are with the podcast.
Yes, here I am with a horror podcast now. So it's all coming together. Okay, so anyways, if you guys have not already read from the title or from what we said earlier, we are covering the 1992 gem Candyman. It was based on Clive Barker's short story called The Forbidden.
So, The Forbidden is not exactly like the movie. It's a little bit different, but it basically follows the theme and the premise. Um, it's this, the setting is this place called the Spectre Street Estate. And this girl named Helen is doing research on graffiti. And so she's writing her thesis about graffiti. So she goes into this estate because it's in ruin, it's torn down. There's graffiti everywhere. Gangs run it, and so she's going around and looking at all the graffiti, taking pictures, taking notes, and she starts to hear some stories about some really weird murders that have happened in that town. But nobody really wants to say anything, or if she goes back to them, they say that they never told her that, or things like that. It's just some very weird stories.
I'm gonna interject real quick. So I did read part of it. I read this story years ago, but I took some time today and I read just part of it because I didn't have a lot of time to read it. But I did catch where Anne Marie's character in that compared the killer to Jack the Ripper because he used a hook. And I just thought that that was really funny because I actually just listened to the Morbid podcast. I was going back and I listened to the 5-parter of Jack the Ripper.
I noticed that because you told me you were listening to
about it. Yes. And he never used a hook. He did like gut people and stuff, but I don't think he actually used a hook. But still, it's just crazy that I just listened to a 5-part podcast about that.
There is a lot of gutting in Candyman. But so as she's going through these houses and people are telling her stories, that she meets, well, first she goes into this one house that is more torn down than kind of the others, and she is walking through this house because it's abandoned, and she finds this really weird painting. It's like a man with his head thrown back that's screaming, and he's just, it says like that he has super sharp teeth and that he looks like his hair is knotted strands, like just snaked from his scalp. And then by this painting, there was a phrase written that said, "Sweets to the sweet."
And it's funny because that's actually, they actually took that phrase from the story and incorporated it into the movie, which is really cool. Like, whenever it's in the bathroom scene and it's written in that doo-doo on the wall.
I thought there's a scene in the movie where, yes, "Sweets to the sweet" is written on the bathroom walls because there's a murder where basically the Candyman cuts a little boy's genitals off and flushes them down a toilet. So there's this whole murder scene in a bathroom, and "Sweets to the sweet" is written, and I thought it looked like dried blood that had all the bees stuck in it, and that's what I thought it was until Mal said it was literal
Surprise,
crap.
motherfucker. It is shit.
Oh my
shit
god.
on the
It
walls.
was disgusting.
And so with the Forbidden, Bernard Rose, I believe, actually went to Clive Barker and was like, "Hey, I want to make your short story into a movie." And so Clive Barker was like, "All right, bet we can do that. I'll be the executive producer on it and everything." And so Bernard Rose, he decided to change the location to Chicago first of all because of course the original story took place in Liverpool, and he decided Chicago simply because of the quote dynamic architecture and large amounts of prejudice in the city. He ended up finding Cabrini Green, which was a very large housing project, which was known for poor construction, violence, and lots of high robbery rates. Cabrini Green was actually built in 1942 originally, and it was known as the Francis Cabrini Homes, which was 586 two-story row houses separated into 54 buildings. In 1957, the Cabrini Homes extended with, this is a crazy amount of units in my opinion, 1,925 units. And that was within 15 buildings. And I don't know about you, but that is a lot of people stacked up on top of each other.
Yeah.
Like, that, it's just crazy. I personally, we come from like, it's a small city, but it's not like too small. You know what I'm saying? But like, I have never seen in my life that many people just stacked up on top of each other.
Terrifying.
Then in 1962, the William Green Homes were built, which consisted of 1,096 units. And then by the time 2011 came around, all of the high-rises had been demolished, with some of the Francis Cabrini row houses still intact. But it was in awful condition and mostly abandoned.
So they put the story in this setting, but for the Forbidden, there's not a very clear backstory. It's just kind of the premise of immortality through Candyman's victims. But Tony Todd, who plays Candyman,
Fucking icon.
we love it.
I love Tony Todd. Tony Todd, if you ever listen to this podcast, I fucking love you. Like, I literally, I gotta take a moment and talk about how much I love this man. You have scared me my entire damn life, and I am so here for it. Like, last week, you and retweeted one of my tweets when I was talking about how fucking iconic you were. And that's what inspired me to do this podcast, this one on Candyman. And I really, really love you. And my mom says she loves you too. Anyways.
So Tony Todd came up with the background for the movie Candyman, but it was not. That was one difference between The Forbidden and Candyman. So, the background on the movie.
So a little bit of background on the movie. Like I said, it was directed by Bernard Rose, and Clive Barker was the executive producer on it. It stars Virginia Madsen as Helen. That's my girl, Virginia. Xander Berkeley as Trevor.
We hate Trevor.
Dude, fuck Trevor. I don't trust anyone with the name Trevor. I'm sorry to any Trevors that are listening, but damn.
If you're a Trevor, go ahead and quit this episode because we're going to be hating on Trevor the whole time.
Tony Todd as Candyman slash his, human counterpart in a way, Daniel Robital. Cassie, it's either Casey or Cassie Lemons. I'm just going to say Cassie Lemons as Bernadette. My girl Bernadette.
We love Bernie.
Justice for Bernadette. And then Vanessa Estelle Williams as Anne-Marie. It was released October 16th, 1992, way before either of us were born. The budget was estimated at $6 million, but you said that you saw it at what, like
around 8 or 9 million.
Around 8 or 9 million. The opening weekend box office in the US and Canada was only 5.4 million, so like they didn't even make their money back the first opening weekend.
But then they did.
Yeah, but then with the gross of worldwide of 25.7 million, and it has a runtime of 1 hour 39 minutes with the tagline of "We dare you to say his name." Ooh, that, and "We dare you to say his name 5 times."
Yes, so in the short story, The Forbidden, the way that you would summon the Candyman was, it never said anything about saying his name 5 times specifically, but it was basically if you didn't believe in him, he would come and murder you in this gruesome way that would keep his story alive. So basically, he stayed alive by being a rumor. People would just tell about these horrible deaths and the Candyman, and if you didn't believe in that, then he would be awakened and he could come to you. But in the movie, you had to look into a mirror and say Candyman 5 times.
Yes, and I can say, like, in some parts of the movie, it says, look in the mirror, say his name 5 times, and then other parts say that you also have to turn out the light as well, and you only actually see that in the very, very beginning with homegirl with the really, really flat chest, and with bitch-ass Trevor at the end. So I don't really think it matters. I think for him to actually just, like, come right then and there, you have to turn off the light, but if you don't, he's just gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna stalk your ass instead.
Right, because she said Candyman 5 times talking to the nurse, and he didn't come for a little bit. Then he gutted that man from the...
Oh, the doctor, yes!
That was terrifying.
Oh my gosh, y'all, whenever we get to that part, I have a lot to say about when he guts that doctor.
That and the garage scene.
Oh my god. I'm getting chills just thinking about the garage scene.
So with that, let's get into the movie. The background in the movie for the Candyman is that there's a man named Daniel Robital?
Yes.
Robital. He's an artist, and he's famous for his portraits. And this rich white man basically pays him to paint his daughter in her virgin beauty. And shocker, they fall in love. So it's basically a forbidden interracial affair, because at this time that was not common, not allowed. It was just very...
Which is fucked up. I'm going to go ahead and say it. That's so messed up, and it's just so unfortunate.
Right. Like, so the dad finds out, and he's obviously outraged. So he takes Daniel and basically has a mob come and cut his right painting hand off, and then they tie him up and cover his body. They strip him down and cover his body with honey, and then cheer as he's stung to death by bees.
Oh, and then the kicker of it all, after he's dead from all of the bee stings, they end up taking his body and putting it where the future Cabrini Green was going to be, and they burn his body alive. And Wait. They burned his body alive, then they spread the ashes where Cabrini Green was. And so that's why he specifically comes from Cabrini Green, apparently. Allegedly. So the movie starts out. It is this awesome, like, a overhead shot of Chicago, of like the roadways and stuff of Chicago. And there's this score. Oh my gosh. Like,
The
I'm thinking
music
about
was
it.
killing me.
The score of this movie was beautiful. And didn't you say that the person that scored it, he thought it was going to be like a romantic movie, sort of?
So the composer for the music of Candyman, like the whole track, he was under the impression that the movie was going to be kind of a romantic horror, like a more of a
Like a romantic drama, sort of?
yes, more of a romantic drama, psychological horror. So he was a little bit disappointed when it came out as a slasher,
But,
but
I mean,
the music killed it.
Still though, if you think deep down into it, which we'll get into the story of it, it is kind of a romance.
It
A little
is.
bit. Like, yeah, it's kind of sad and fucked up, and it's kind of a one-sided romance, but like, it's still a romance.
Exactly.
So
It is.
we're on this overhead shot of Chicago. The music is playing, and then all of a sudden you see all these bees, and there's this deep voice that's in the background, and it says, "I came for you," I believe, and it's just like sort of that first introduction of Candyman's voice, and then you hear a scream. And there's these big, tall buildings, and all these bees come out, or what's perceived to be bees.
Looks like a bee tornado.
Yes, it literally looks like a bee tornado. Like, there's all these, I'm like 99% sure, very shitty CGI bees. I was like, is my TV broken? And I'm like, oh wait, this probably was not supposed to be seen in HD, so.
Now they did, fun fact, they did breed the bees specifically for the movie. They were younger, but they were bred to look older, so they looked like adult bees, but they were younger so that the stingers weren't as painful because Tony Todd was actually covered in bees, real bees, for the role. And he was stung, how many times did you say?
I read 27 times.
Yeah,
but then I
somewhere
think
in
you
there.
told me 23 times.
26. Yeah,
26.
so 26 or 27. And he negotiated for $1,000 bonus per bee sting.
Which I absolutely love. And I don't know if you saw this as well. Virginia Madsen is actually allergic to bees.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I actually heard about that a long time ago. She was allergic to bees. And of course they had like EpiPens and shit, and ambulance ready to go just in case.
That's crazy.
But I don't think she actually got stung, which was really good.
They
for
were
her.
on her though.
Yes, they're all over her. Ugh.
And it says that it took about an hour and a half to get all of the bees on Tony. I would be itching. That would be awful.
Ugh. So after that shot of all of the bees in the city and all of that, there's this voiceover of this girl telling a story. The story starts out, there's this girl named Clara. She's babysitting this small baby, and she ends up inviting this guy over who is not her boyfriend. It was not Michael. She invited over Billy. And Billy is played by Ted Raimi, who is Sam Raimi's brother. Which, Sam Raimi, if you guys don't know, he directed Evil Dead, and also, I completely forgot about this, he directed fucking Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Oh my
I
gosh.
love Spider-Man so much. Like, that, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, fire.
Top tier.
I don't care what anybody says. Tom Holland, go suck an egg. I love you, Tom Holland, but that Tobey Maguire, love it.
It's the OG.
Yes.
It's so good.
And so, Clara and Billy are like, getting a little hot and steamy. They end up going to the bathroom, and she's chit-chatting with them, and she's like, you want to hear a scary story? And he's like, yeah, tell me a scary story. And she's like, so, have you ever heard of Candyman? And he's like, no. And she says, well, if you say his name 5 times in the mirror and turn off the light, he'll appear behind you, breathing down your neck. Which he's like, all right, cool.
So she's like, let's try it. How about
let's try it. And so he's behind her, and he is holding what I'm going to say is a very flat chest of titties with the
Peter bites.
ugly-ass bra on. I know it was the early 90s, but that was an ugly-ass bra. I don't care what anyone says. Grabbing at her chesticles, and she says Candyman 4 times, And then she stops. And she's
and then
like,
Billy does the smart thing.
yes. She's like, I've never gotten past 4. And she says, go downstairs. I have a surprise for you. Which I was like, what would that surprise be? Probably just them getting it on.
We will never know.
We will never know because homegirl Clara decides that she's going to say his name one more time in that mirror, turn off the lights, and wait a second. Boom! There he is. Comes up behind her, fucking slashes her. We don't see it. All we see is just blood, I guess, coming through the ceiling, I would assume.
Yes,
I never understood that. Honestly, my brain has just never understood how blood can just go through a ceiling that quickly.
Like, even if it came through the drain, it wouldn't leak through the ceiling like that. But that was terrifying.
But it is terrifying, yes.
Billy's just sitting on the couch waiting for her surprise, which we never find out. Mr. Clive and whoever else. We want to know what the surprise was.
Yes, Bernard Rose, tell us what the surprise was.
Come on, Bernie. And so basically, he's just sitting there. He hears a scream, and then blood starts leaking out the ceiling onto his head. And then, boom,
it flips back. It flips back to Helen, our main girl, Helen, and she's interviewing this college student. And the college student's like, yeah, homeboy, his hair ended up turning white, I think, and he got like committed, and Clara was dead, and the baby was dead, and it was just all a really, really fucked up story. Well, turns out this is a quote unquote urban legend of the Candyman. And so
Helen and Bernadette they're working on a thesis. This is kind of different from the short story. In the story they're kind of studying graffiti, but in this one Helen and Bernadette are working on a thesis about urban legends, or what was that word that it was called?
So the word was, there was a different word of that was the study of like graffiti and stuff.
Yeah.
This is probably wrong. Seismology? No.
It was something like that.
Something like that. Hold on.
But it meant basically like the meaning behind things, or like something like that, right?
Yeah, it was meaning behind. I'm not gonna remember this word. Whatever. Anyways,
it was something like seismology.
I think seismology is actually like the study of earthquakes and shit, but I could be wrong.
You're right. Seismic
but
waves.
It's something like that. It's one of those weird words that I just cannot pronounce for the life of me. Hannah, are you looking it up?
Yes.
I was so close. Semiotics. But yes, okay, so actually in the movie, she's a semiotics graduate student, and she is researching urban legends for her thesis. There we go.
Yes. So, as she's doing this research with Bernadette,
with our girl Bernadette, Bernie is sitting up there talking to this motherfucker that looks like Saved by the Bell. Zach Morris, I believe is his name. Yeah, with that little haircut. Who called Saved by the Bell?
Right, what was there?
And so they're just sitting there just kind of chit-chatting a little bit, and it eventually goes on to the introduction of bitch-ass Trevor. Helen goes to his big-ass auditorium of a classroom, and this scene was very reminiscent of the movie Urban Legend. You've probably never seen that. It's another one that I have on our list.
Nope.
And basically, in the movie Urban Legend, if you haven't seen it, there's this big scene that's very similar to this, where a professor is talking about different urban legends and stuff, and I'm pretty sure in that movie, which I haven't seen in a long time, I'm pretty sure in that movie, he talks about the baby alligators going into the sewers and stuff, which is what they're discussing in this movie. So yes. I think Urban Legend done stole a scene from Candyman. And so...
They did.
Right? And so we figure out that Trevor is a bitch. Okay? The class ends. Helen goes to walk down and talk to him at the bottom of the auditorium, and she sees him talking to this bitch named Stacy. We don't like Stacy.
No.
She has a very punchable face. I just have to say it.
And she's so much younger than Trevor.
Yes, she's probably like 20, and he's at least like 45. Like, let's keep it real. He's at least 45. Yeah. And so she's up there giving Trevor fuck me eyes, and Helen is like, she notices it, and she's like, so what's with your little student? I could tell that she was blushing. She couldn't look at me. And Trevor's like, oh, it's nothing. She's just a student, blah, blah, blah.
He's like, leave me alone. Like,
Literally.
it's nothing. Don't worry about it. He's so rude to her throughout the whole movie.
Yes, and I have it actually written in my notes. Helen deserves better than this bitch-ass man. Like, she deserves so much better than him.
Yes, he never supports her throughout the movie.
No, not at all.
And as soon as she's in there, in that room, being held down, guess who he runs off to? Dicey.
So anyways, Helen, it transitions to Helen. She's up there typing out her interview, the one that was talking about Homegirl and Billy and how they wanted to fuck and all that. And the cleaning lady comes up and is like, hey, can I clean your room? And she's like, yeah, of course. And the cleaning lady overhears the interview and she's like, so you're researching Candyman, huh? And Helen's like, yeah, do you know anything about him? And she's like, I don't, but my friend does. So she calls over her friend Kitty, which for some reason, I love that name, Kitty. It makes me laugh. It reminds me of Eric Foreman's mom. So Kitty comes over and she tells the story of Ruthie Jean. And Ruthie Jean was a woman that lived at Cabrini Green. And one day, or one night, I should say, she starts hearing something that sounds like scratching in the walls. And so she calls the police and she's like, hey, I think there's someone coming through the walls. And the police end up not believing her. And she calls back 2 or 3 times and nobody ever shows up. And she was basically found slashed to death. Like, she was gutted.
And about the crawling through the walls, this is interesting. So these rooms / apartments at Cabrini Green all had these they were structured to where they had like a medicine cabinet that had a hollow wall behind it that you could pretty much just smash through to see into the next apartment.
So what it was each apartment was a mirror of each other. So each bathroom is on the same wall. And so each medicine chest is at the same position. And they never put any type of wall, plaster, cement blocks. They didn't put anything behind it. And so if one medicine chest was taken out, the other one could be pushed through. So there's an opening gap between apartments.
Yes, and Helen figures this out because her condo that she lives in has something similar to that. So she goes down to Cabrini Green to kind of investigate, and
wait. You're going too fast. Yes. You missed a big chunk.
What did I miss?
So Bernie and Helen go back to Helen's apartment, and that's where they talk about the medicine cabinet and everything and how it can go out. And they go over to Helen's bathroom, and they take the medicine chest out. And that whenever they put it back, that's whenever Helen is like, hey, yo, let's say the name.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And so they both stand there. They say the name 4 times. And then Helen gets up super close and says, Candyman. And of course, nothing happens at this moment. And so, us as the audience were like, oh, well, this is some bullshit.
Justice for Bernadette. She was smart the whole time.
Justice for Bernadette. She did not say his name.
Bernadette be holding Helen on a leash the whole movie. She was like, girl, get back here. We're not going in there.
Yes. And so this is our sort of second insight to Trevor being such a fucking nasty bitch. Helen is in bed. It seems super duper late at night. And she hears some noises and motherfucking jump scare. It's Trevor. And she's like, hey, yo, what time is it? And he says, oh, it's just late. And I was sitting there like, you was fucking Stacy.
Exactly.
Shut the fuck up. And so now Helen and Bernie go over to Cabrini Green.
Yes. So they go over to Cabrini Green to kind of just investigate a little bit. And, fun fact about this, where they were shooting, there were actually a lot of gang members that were around the place where they were shooting, and they would kind of heckle or like harass the actors. So the directors made a deal with them to say they could be in the movie if they would not hurt anybody or mess with anybody. So they were in the Cabrini Green scene. They were actually messing with Helen and Bernadette while they were trying to get up to Ruthie Jean's apartment.
In their little purple and turquoise matching outfits.
Yes, they pulled up in the outfits.
They said, we're going to be a gang. We're going to be matching, baby. Yes. And also, so I just want to mention real quick, I have a note written that was like, being hassled by men, I can't. I cannot stand it whenever I'm somewhere and a man comes up to me and is just hassling me, what you doing, where you going, why ain't you smiling? Like, get out of my face.
That why aren't you smiling, or let me see a smile. Like,
I,
no.
I walk into every single place with the biggest mean mug on so nobody will mess with me. I don't need anybody messing with me while I'm trying to get my shit done. Like,
so annoying. And these
ugh.
gang members just mess with them all the way up, and they think that they're the police, so they like yell up the stairs and they're like, hey y'all, the popo's coming. So they're just like, ugh.
Yeah, and Helen at least says, well, that means that they're not going to mess with us, which is good. That's great.
Right.
And so they're walking around, they're trying to go to Ruthie Jean's apartment, and Helen is stopping and taking pictures of the graffiti, and they see the first Sweets to the Sweet graffiti on the wall. And then there's a sudden jump scare, and it's a dog.
We love the dog. Justice
Yes.
for the dog.
Justice for the dog, the cute little Rottweiler that was just trying to protect its owner.
So cute, and he just jumps up in the window. Or
No, this was before
he
the window.
comes
He
out.
comes
yeah.
out because I think Anne Marie is like, who the fuck is
window
out
was
there?
the short story. The dog
No,
jumps up in the window.
The window's later too.
Yeah. But that happened in the short story. It was like this random, just rabid dog that just showed up dead.
And so they're walking along, and they go into her apartment, and it's all dark and scary. And honestly, it makes me really sad that people have to sometimes live like that.
Graffiti everywhere.
Yes, and then the apartment's just all like dark and creepy. It honestly, whenever I was little, I always thought that apartment was like burnt in somehow. Like it looks really bad. So they go to the bathroom. Helen crosses over to the next apartment via the mirror, and she ends up finding the big mouth mural of like Candyman, and his mouth is opening. He's
she
like
crawls through the teeth.
She crawls through the teeth. It's literally a hole in the wall. Crawls through the teeth, sees the mural. She goes to take a picture. Boo, she's out of film, which is not anything that you've ever had to deal with in your life.
Thankfully.
I remember them disposable cameras.
Was that when she saw the candy?
Yes, then she sees what they called I read offerings on the floor, and one of them has a razor blade in it, and it's like really gross. And she ends up going back to Bernadette and scares the shit out of her. And I just have to say,
girl, come back.
I just have to say, I've always found it really, really funny, which I pointed this out to Hannah when we watched it. Bernadette really put Helen's jacket down to sit on
the grimy floor.
No, it was on the side of the tub, and she just
because it was so dirty, and she just puts Helen's jacket down.
She straight up was like, "Oh, I ain't getting no germs on my ass today. It'll just be on Helen's jacket."
And Helen wants to go back, and Bernadette's like, "Girl, come on, we're leaving."
So then they meet Anne Marie. And Anne Marie takes them to her apartment, and she's talking about how she could hear Ruthie Jean screaming, and how she called the police and nobody ever came, and how she fears for herself and she fears for her baby named Anthony, which that's such a cute little baby, little chunky baby.
Oh, he was so cute.
And I just have to say, she had her little apartment set up cute too.
She did. She made the best of it.
And so we transition into dinner with Trevor, Bernie, Helen, some other guy,
I think
and
his name was Archie in the story, but I don't know if that's what his name was in the movie.
Well, there was some other guy that didn't talk, because I just noticed 5 people at the table.
Oh, okay,
I
yeah.
think that may have been Bernadette's man, but he was just never introduced because they were sitting next to each other. I'm just assuming. And then there's this fucking guy that looked like Benjamin fucking Franklin.
He did. He had long, curly, messy, ratty hair that
like brown hair that looked like fucking Benjamin Franklin.
I know it had lice in it.
And then he put on his little glasses and shit. I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely Benjamin Franklin, y'all. And Ben Franklin is up there like questioning them about their thesis and shit. And he ends up telling them the story of Daniel Robital and what happened, which Hannah's already went through. Cut off his hand, honey smeared all over, dead.
And he's acting like a know-it-all. Because Helen's talking about the story, and he's like, oh yeah, I wrote that paper like 12 years ago. Here's the background. Like, nobody asked you.
Yes, he's such a bitch.
He is.
So later on, Helen's back on her bullshit. She's up there taking pictures and everything back at Cabrini Green. And she goes to see Anne Marie and ends up meeting the little boy Jake, who he lives there at Cabrini Green. And Helen asks Jake about the Candyman, and she promises that if he tells her about him or, shows her where he lives, then it will be their little secret between each other. And so Jake ends up walking her to this public restroom that's on the grounds of Cabrini Green and tells her of the story of the disabled boy who was castrated in the public bathroom by quote unquote Candyman. And the boy ended up dying, unfortunately, and it's very sad. And so Helen
she walks into this disgusting bathroom. She can't even breathe. She's
sorry.
like gagging.
I would not have went into that bathroom.
No.
I don't care how badly I am obsessed with this story. I would not go into that bathroom. First of all, it looks scary. Just on the outside. Just the little building itself looks scary. Second of all, you walk in there, it stank.
Also, when I see Sweets to the Sweets written in shit on the bathroom stalls, I'm gone. I'm out of there. But she's bullshit. Like gagging, looking in all the stalls.
But she's like, ooh, I gotta get my fucking pictures for this very important thesis. I would have just failed my thesis at this point.
Really? And so she goes in to finally the last stall where the boys' genitals were flushed down this certain toilet, and it's infested with bees.
Well,
bees are
specifically, she opens up the toilet for I don't know what fucking reason.
Yeah, why did she touch it?
Why did she open up the fucking toilet is my question.
Like, if she has to go in there, at least get some gloves.
Exactly.
Because I know she got some sort of disease from that.
Disgusting. And so right after she opens up the toilet and there's all these bees, this dude walks in with a fucking hook, and he's like...
But he's just holding it. That's important. He's just
holding the hook. And he goes, I hear you're looking for Candyman, bitch. And she's like, look, I'm just trying to leave. And then his whole ass gang walks in, and they end up beating the living shit out of her. You can, like, hear her getting beaten. Jake's still outside. And it transitions to a police lineup. And it's 4 different dudes, and they're like, I hear you're looking for Candyman, bitch.
Yeah, they have to go through and each say it, and she tells them which one it was. And
yes, it was number 5.
So she actually believes that he was Candyman and tells Jake that they put Candyman away, and he's like, you broke the secret. You said nobody would know.
I wrote, he is upset that he was roped into this bullshit dealing with the police and shit. Exactly. I'm sorry. That is a child of I don't fuck with the police. And I understand that, and I understand his fear and everything, and I'm just like, Helen, why you gotta rope this little boy into this? It's just really messed up.
If she would have just stayed out of that bathroom.
Stayed in her fucking lane.
Because what did she learn? Nothing.
She got her ass beat. That's it. And so Helen's like, the Candyman isn't real. Yeah, right. Still love you, Helen, but damn. And so fast forward a couple weeks later, Helen's eye that was all fucked up was looking better, and she made dinner for nasty ass fucking Trevor with his punchable ass face after he was sitting up there eating shit. I'm sorry, I really just don't like him. Because she was like, aren't you hungry? Did you eat already? And he's like, oh no, even though he was sitting there looking like he done been fed already. She
made him a whole meal, and he's like, okay, and just eats it. Like, rude.
She even put rolls in a basket for him. I'm sorry, I have never once had rolls from a basket before. Like, that is nice. She made him an amazing dinner with rolls in a basket.
He goes, thanks.
Next is
the garage scene.
Okay, and so now, fast forward a little bit, they're Helen's back at the university, and she meets up with Bernadette, and Bernadette gives her some pictures that were recovered from when she was attacked. And, Helen actually, this is one part that I did write down that I wanted to mention. Helen expresses the concern for the fact that 2 people died and the police did not care. But when a white woman was attacked, the police was all over it.
Yes.
Which is still so, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Infuriating?
Yeah, infuriating, but also it's still valid today. Like, if you think about it, like, the police don't give a shit about people of color, and it makes me so freaking mad. I love all people, I really do, unless you're an asshole, but damn, police, do better. Like, this was made in 1992. That was, how fucking long ago? 31 years ago? Like, get it together, police. Anyways, sorry.
So Helen is going to her car, she's looking at the pictures, and this is our
she's not even really looking at the pictures yet. This was back in the day where you had to like put them on like the little slides. So she was just kind of like putting the little slides up to the light just to kind of see the little negatives of them or whatever.
And this is our favorite scene.
And then all of a sudden, she hears Helen. Oh, it's my
so
motherfucking
good.
boy.
You literally get
It's my boy.
chills.
It's my boy, Tony motherfucking Todd in this bitch.
Tony, if you're listening, just go ahead and wipe her up because she won't shut up about you.
I love you, Tony.
So you just see him, it flashes to him, and he's dressed up in his overcoat with his boots.
His big ass overcoat with the fur on the edges, and his fucking shoes and his fucking pants, and he's standing there, and like, I'm pretty sure back in the day you really couldn't see his face because it wasn't in HD, but now you kind of can, and he's just kind of standing there with his hands like behind him, and he's looking up. And I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing, boy?
It's so good. You just see, like, his silhouette at the end of the parking garage, and he's over there going, Helen. And he just keeps saying it, and, girl, I would have got in my car and ran.
Right, and she's up there, she, like, falls into a trance, sort of, and she's like, but I'm late. And it's like, girlfriend, it don't matter that you're late. You just need to get the fuck out of there. He's ready to kill your ass.
That's like, another thing from the short story. There was, the Candyman was always described as seductive. And he, like, would put his victims in trances to where they couldn't really resist him. Like, they could try, but he would just put them in this sort of, like, seductive trance. And so that's kind of what was happening here with Helen.
And so this is where shit really starts heating up, y'all. So it transitions real quick. There's a whole bunch of flashes on screen and everything. And you hear screaming, right? And Helen wakes up and she's in Anne-Marie's apartment in her bathroom. And she's covered in blood, right? There's blood all over the floor, all over her clothes. And she's like, what the hell is going on? And she goes to open up the door. Boom. Dog's dead. There's a whole ass Rottweiler head on the floor.
It was so unnecessary.
So unnecessary.
The dog was just decapitated, and she wasn't injured. That's important. She had just blood all over her. And then she hears Anne-Marie just screaming.
Oh, and it's important to note that before she left the bathroom, she grabbed a meat cleaver that was on the ground. Because she's like, she hears all this screaming, she sees all this blood. She's scared. She's like, I gotta defend myself. What's going on? And so she hears Anne-Marie screaming. And she goes into the bedroom, and she's, like, over the crib, like, screaming and rocking back and forth and shit. So Anthony, the little baby, is presumed dead at this point. And she's like, where's my baby? Where's my baby? And Helen's like, Anne-Marie. And Anne-Marie turns around, and she pissed. All she sees is red. Like, I swear on everything, this bitch blacked out at this point.
So she thinks that Helen killed her baby. So she's like, you killed my baby. So she goes over there and she's trying to attack Helen. So Helen's just defending herself and she kind of cuts her with the meat cleaver, but not very much.
She kind of cuts her. No, she straight up was like...
Okay, but she was defending herself.
Okay, I'm going to give it to Helen. Helen was definitely defending herself.
But she tackles Anne-Marie, pins her on the ground, and has the meat cleaver up, and she's like, calm down, and the police walk in.
She got her a little bit.
Okay,
she got her in the arm.
She kind of slashed her arm off.
So she slashed her arm, and then blood starts squirting everywhere, because this is very early 90s. You know they got a little blood tube in there, and someone's just blowing on it. Blood squirts out. She gets Anne-Marie on the ground, and like Hannah said, the police show up. They arrest Helen.
Isn't looking very good right now.
Yeah, no, they arrest Helen, and this is the most awkward scene of the whole movie. She's being strip searched by Rusty fucking Schwimmer, which I don't know how many Jason Goes to Hell fans are out there, but that's fucking Joey B. Like, get out of my face. You ain't no cop, you're Joey B. Go in there and make me some burgers with your little short husband. Anyways, she gets strip searched, and Helen is basically told that she's under arrest by Detective Frank. She was like, can I please speak to Detective something, and then he walks in, and she's like, oh my God, Frank. She's like trying to be like chill with him, and he's like, you're under arrest, and do you understand?
And so she's not getting it, which I'm like, Helen, listen, you were covered in blood with no injuries. You were holding a meat cleaver. You sliced up Anne-Marie's arm just a little bit. And you're standing over her with a knife. Like, so anyways, she gets arrested and she gets one phone call, which, ugh.
She ends up calling her hubby Trevor. And
guess who doesn't pick up?
Yeah, Trevor. Trevor doesn't fucking pick up. And so it basically goes to voicemail. She leaves a voicemail and she asks Rusty Schwimmer, "What, can you tell me what time it is?" And she says 3 a.m.
Oh, and it flashes whenever the voicemail's going. It flashes to Helen's bedroom, Helen and Trevor's bedroom, and nobody in the bed.
Yeah, nobody's in the bed, and it's showing like all their pictures together and stuff, and how they were such a happy couple at one time, and now he's such a fucking bitch. So anyways.
So he's not home at 3 a.m., so we know he's cheating.
Yes. And so Helen is held at the jail until Trevor comes and picks her up. And while she's in there, for some reason, she kind of sees like visions of baby Anthony, but like it's just quick flashes. And then Trevor comes, picks her up. It's kind of a media circus outside, and he's just like, "Keep your fucking head down."
And she says, "Why didn't you answer?" And he goes, "Oh, I was fast asleep, honey," when we know he wasn't in the bed.
Yes, that was like right after they had a little discussion with the lawyer, and Trevor's just being insensitive as fuck, and she gets in the bath, and that's whenever she confronts Trevor, and then Trevor's like, I have to go to work and grab some papers. I should only be 20 minutes. And so Helen gets out the bath. She cracks open a very cold looking Budweiser, which I don't drink beer, but it looked very delicious. And she starts looking at the pictures because she completely forgot about them. And so she is looking at the pictures through her little slides and shit on her big ass projector. Because, you know, it's 1992. Got the big ass projectors just in your house. And she is looking at this one picture, and she goes to like mess with the like visibility on it, like the clearness of it. And she sees that Candyman is standing behind her in one of the pictures that she took of a mirror, which that scared me. Like, I remember being little and that scaring me, and I'm 26 years old and it still scares me.
That was terrifying. You just see his silhouette behind her, like, and she is just noticing it.
Just now noticing it. And so she's a little disheveled from that, so she goes to the bathroom, and boom! He comes through the fucking mirror. And after a small little confrontation, Candyman has her in the corner, and this is my favorite line of the whole movie. She gonna say, "Keep away from me!" Who says keep away from me?
And he does. He cuts her neck.
Yes,
which
cuts her neck.
They never notice that she has an injury, which I'm like, why would she cut herself?
Exactly. Stabs Helen in the neck. And he states that he has to kill her. But Bernadette, she's up there knocking at the door trying to bring Helen some flowers. Poor Bernadette had no idea. She opens up the door because clearly it's fucking unlocked because it's 1992. And she goes inside. The door slams behind her. Meanwhile, Helen's on the floor in the kitchen yelling, "Bernie, get out, go, run," like the best that she can, even though she's in a trance. And door slams, Candyman standing right behind poor Bernadette. And all you hear is yelling and slashing and crying and grunting. And it's just, it's really sad. It makes me so sad. Like,
it's horrible.
So Candyman's all like, "Surprise, motherfucker." And Trevor's bitch ass ends up coming home, and Helen is on the floor covered in blood holding a bloody knife, which this is whenever it had me really questioning, which I end up figuring it out later. Why the fuck was Candyman trying to frame this woman for no reason? Which that helps to kind of feed into the fear of her and what she has quote unquote done.
So keep that in mind. He keeps framing her. Then it shows Bernadette all slashed up.
Yes.
And she's blue. I never really understood that because she wouldn't have already, like, hit that, like, post-mortem, like, decomposition. Because she's blue.
Helen, like, passed out, and she wakes up. She's in her room. There's a cop next to her, and she's like, "Trevor!" And she gets up, and then, boom, there's Bernadette's fucking body. And I've always wondered why she was blue. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. It had probably only been, like, an hour. Bodies are still pretty warm within an hour, I would think. Right. And so, Helen is then taken to a psychiatric facility, and at one point she's strapped to a bed, and Candyman appears before her, and he just asks for a kiss from her.
And he's floating directly
above her, like just floating there. And
so she starts screaming.
That scares me. Like, imagine being strapped to a fucking table, and this scary ass motherfucker in his fur coat with the hook for a hand is hovering above you, talking about how he wants to kiss you.
Not to mention, if he opens his coat, his chest is all rotted out and it's filled with bees.
Disgusting.
I'm thinking no on the kiss.
No. And so Helen starts screaming about how he's there, and she gets all drugged up real good. And she was basically drugged up for a whole ass month, my guy. Like, drugged up for a month. And then at one point, Candyman is actually kind of caring for baby Anthony. Like, it flashes to, like, a point where, like, he comes up and, like, the baby's, like, sucking on his finger and shit. And I'm like, oh, look. He's kind of taking care of him a little bit. It's kind of cute.
It's not cute. It's creepy.
It is kind of creepy. And so then Helen gets taken to, like, the main doctor's office. And he tells her of the first-degree murder charge of Bernadette that she has on her. And she tries to convince him that Candyman is real. And, of course, like any sane person, he don't believe her. He's sitting there like, you crazy bitch. Done made up this whole ass story so you can try to get off on murdering your best friend.
And she goes, I can call him. So she sits there and she goes, Candyman.
Oh, and there's a mirror in the room, too.
Yes, she looks at the mirror and says it 5 times. And it waits, and it seems like he's not going to come. And the doctor's looking at her like, girl.
And then his face changes. Homie's face, literally, he's just like sitting there looking at her. And then it's just like a face of, oh my God, what the fuck just happened? Because his bitch ass got.
He got gutted. You just see blood leak out of his mouth, and then Candyman comes up over him, and he's gutted him from the waist up to the neck.
From behind. Gutted his ass. And, yep, so he appears. He murks the doctor. Doc is gone.
Oh, also, the doctor showed her some film of her whenever she was drugged up for a month, whenever she was screaming because Candyman was asking for a kiss, but you can't see him on the film, so she just looks crazy.
Yes, she just looks absolutely crazy. And so, doctor's dead, and Candyman is like, I'm yours. And he releases her from her straps on her wrist.
And again, frame her.
This motherfucker flies out the window backwards.
It was very iconic. He just zoomed out the back of the window.
The way that he zooms out backwards is so iconic. Like, what supervillain not only jumps out the window to leave, but jumps out backwards?
I put it in my notes. It says he zoinked out the window. Because it literally made that noise. It was like, zoom.
Yup.
It was so cool. But he frames her again. So Helen is in panic mode. She's like, I'm not going to be framed.
Mm-hmm. So she goes out through the window, the broken window, and knocks on a window where a nurse is at. The nurse opens up the window. She straight up knocks this nurse out and steals her fucking clothes because she's like, I'm getting the hell out of here, which is the smartest thing that she has done yet. I'm just saying. I would have gotten the fuck out of there too.
Right.
And she runs all the way home.
It does show her over a bridge first. Do you remember that?
Yes.
She was like, it looked like she was contemplating just killing herself and like ending it. But then...
Wait, no. That's right after. Because she realizes that she doesn't have anything else. Like, all she has... I think at one point...
Oh, you're right, because she goes home to see... Yes.
So she goes home.
Horrible.
This is, like, the worst part of the whole movie. She gets home. The door is wide open. She walks in. And her whole ass condo is painted fucking pink. And don't get me wrong.
Guess who's on the wall painting?
I just have to talk about this pink real quick. Don't get me wrong. I love pink. But when I tell you, this is like an ill-colored Pepto-Bismol pink.
It looks so bad.
Like, it had some brown undertones in it, and I was not here for it. But guess who's painting the fucking walls pink?
Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Stacy
she is up in there with Trevor, and she's painting the apartment. And so Helen walks in, and she's like, and Trevor says, call the hospital. And she's like, boy.
Right. Trevor's standing there looking terrified, and he's like, maybe we should call the hospital. And Helen's like, oh, do it. And she tries to hand the phone to Stacy. Stacy's up there crying, looking all scared and shit. You should be scared, Stacy. Just like Trevor's ass should be scared too. And she's just like, Helen's like, you know, you were all I had left. Like, you fucking asshole. You were literally all I had left.
And he's moving in with Stacy while she's in the hospital.
Well, Stacy's moving in with him.
Well,
and she says, were you going to wait until I got out for you to tell me? And she, like, looks at him, and he's looking at her like, you stupid bitch. And she goes, oh, so you knew I wasn't getting out.
And yes, and so then she kind of turns away for a second, and he reaches for the phone, and she turns back around, and he stops. And she says, this is important because it comes up later, but she says, are you scared? And it's like being all creepy, and she's like, are you scared, Trevor?
Yes, she says, what's the matter, Trevor? Scared of something?
Oh, yeah, that's what, yeah. So then she kind of just leaves the apartment, and it shows her on a bridge. She looks like she's going to kill herself, like she's lost everything at this point. Mm-hmm. She's framed for 2 first-degree murders and abduction of the baby.
Right, she's done escape from a mental institution.
But she doesn't. She says, I'm going to do something about it.
Yes, she says, I'm going to do something about this. I'm not going to let him win. And so she makes her way back over to Cabrini Green. And she goes into Candyman's sort of lair, which is through the mirror in Ruthie Jean's apartment, through the hole in the wall, up some fucking boxes that are stacked up and shit. And there are, like, candles everywhere. And she sees the mural of what happened to Daniel originally. And then she turns around, and Candyman is just asleep on a fucking slab of concrete, it looks like. It looks very uncomfortable. And while she was going up there, she grabbed a hook that was on the floor.
Yes, she did.
She goes up to try to hook him real quick, and I think she did get one good hook in.
She stabbed him, but he obviously
he enjoyed it.
Die, so
he liked it.
Yeah.
He straight up, like, shot up and, like, smiled. I was like,
he said, I knew you'd come.
Yes,
like,
he
what?
said, I knew you'd come.
She stabs him, and he goes, I knew you'd come.
Yes, and he was very happy that she came. And that's what she said. And he wants her to completely surrender to him. And she basically just wants to, in a way, sacrifice herself for baby Anthony. Because he said, you know, put yourself out there for me to kill, and I'll let the baby go. And so that's when he says, come with me and be immortal. And he kind of puts her in another trance. And it's like this cool looking spinning shot, sort of. And he's like holding her in a way.
And this is when he goes to kiss her.
Yes. That's whenever she, like, puts her hand on, like, his chest, and she realizes that his chest is rotted and covered in bees. And that's whenever he, like, opens it up and it reveals it. And she's, like, scared as shit. He opens up his mouth, and there's all these bees just streaming
in his mouth.
out.
And he goes up and kisses her, like, full on open mouth. So these bees are just everywhere.
Open mouth kisses her. She passes out, I guess from fear, I would assume. I don't fucking know.
Or the
she
trance.
passes out.
I don't
or
know.
the trance, yeah. And in a way, like, whenever he realized that she passed out, his face kind of looked a little sad to me. Like, I don't know. He looked kind of defeated whenever that happened.
He was definitely in love with Helen.
Yes. Or who he thought Helen may have been, like, reincarnated of.
Yes, and we'll get to that. That's a whole conspiracy we have.
And so Helen wakes up, and she goes to grab her hook that she dropped, and she spots on the wall, it was always you, Helen, like written in blood or maybe like black paint maybe. And she sees the painting of Daniel's lover, which was a woman who looks exactly like her.
Exactly like her. And if you've seen Vampire Diaries, you'll know it's just like when Damon, like, goes for Elena because she looks exactly like Catherine. Like, it's that type of thing. So she looks exactly like his lover that he was murdered for. So that's why he's seeking her out and this whole romantic thing between them. Like, that's why she's special.
And so at this point, Helen can hear baby Anthony crying. Candyman put him into this big bonfire that earlier Jake had mentioned. Helen asked him, like, you know, are you guys building a fire? And he says, yeah, for the party. And so she knows of this big bonfire.
Broken up wood stuff piled up.
All this furniture, trash, all types of shit. And so Helen goes in and she's like, I'm going to save this child, right? And she ends up reaching baby Anthony and she grabs him.
Wait,
but then
while she's climbing down, she's using the hook to kind of climb down. And Jake is looking out from Cabrini Green and he sees a hook go into the pile. So he goes, Candyman's in there. Let's set it on fire. So all the people, all the gang members, and everyone from Cabrini Green comes outside to set the bonfire on fire while Helen's inside there with the baby.
Yes, because they're like, oh my gosh, it's Candyman in there. We got to kill him. And so Helen reaches baby Anthony. Candyman just shows the fuck up out of nowhere and is like, you came. And the fire is started. He wants them all to burn. He's like, basically, I lured you in here. I want us to be eternal forever. Like, we're always going to be immortal, this and that. And she's like, I gotta save this baby.
So she starts crawling out of the bonfire with the baby.
Trying to crawl out.
She's trying. Candyman's kind of chasing her. And then this wooden piece of furniture, I guess, something falls on her back.
Well, not yet. So she sees a piece of wood and ends up stabbing him in the chest. It's this fiery piece of wood. She stabs him in the chest. He's up there screaming and wreathing around and, like, you know, yelling and stuff because he done been stabbed with fire and shit. I mean, you know, that would hurt. And then that's whenever she starts actually crawling out and the piece of wood falls.
It falls on her and she catches on fire. So she's burning up her back, but she's still crawling out holding the baby. And she just manages to get out when her whole hair is on fire, like
everything
her back
is on fire.
And she sees Anne-Marie, and she hands the baby, and she's like, Anthony, and like picks him up, and it's a sweet
baby
thing.
Anthony
She's reunited.
Is
and they try to put Helen out.
Yes, they put the fire out on Helen, and she's like looking up, just like, thank goodness I was able to, you know, give this baby back to his mom. And all of a sudden, there's like a slight explosion in the bonfire, and all these bees are released. And so us, the audience, know that Candyman has been, in a way, killed.
Right.
And so then after that, Helen kind of like falls to the, like, she's already on the ground, but she kind of like, you know, goes limp in a way. And so it kind of fast forwards to Helen's unfortunate funeral. It's this kind of like the camera's like looking into the casket from the side, and she's like laying there. She ain't got no hair. She's all burnt up and shit. It's really sad. But the only people that show up to the funeral was Trevor, Stacy, Benjamin Franklin, and 2 other people plus the fucking priest, which is really sad to me.
The nerve of Trevor and Stacy to show up.
The nerve.
But then we see that Jake and Anne-Marie
I called the as Candyman calls it, the congregation of Cabrini Green.
Yes, he calls it his congregation, but the congregation of Cabrini Green is all coming down to the funeral, and they're all dressed up, and Jake is holding the hook that she was using to climb with, and Anne-Marie is with the baby, and they all just kind of stare down into her grave, because the casket's been lowered, but it hasn't been covered yet, and Jake just kind of throws the hook down there, and this is where we kind of put some things together.
Yes, this is where Hannah actually mentioned a very good question. She said, do they still think that she committed those murders? Do they think that she is Candyman? And I've seen this movie probably 150 times. Like, that's probably a very low estimation. And I have never once thought of that. And now that I am thinking about it, I do kind of think that they think that she is Candyman in a way.
Because that's how, because she comes back, we'll get to that, but that's kind of how she lives on, is because people believe in her, believe that she committed all these murders.
Yes.
So after he drops the hook, it kind of blacks out, and it flashes to Stacy making Trevor dinner, and this scene just looks all too familiar. So
yes.
Stacy's putting in all this work making Trevor a dinner.
Well, okay, I'm gonna pause you right there because she really ain't putting in no work. She literally grabs.
Oh yeah, she was angry.
She grabs not even a styrofoam paper plate, but an actual paper plate that looks like it has some fucking cube steak on it. And she like tosses it from the refrigerator all the way to the counter, like almost damn near falls off. She like slaps it down real quick. She grabs this big ass butcher knife.
Because he's being rude and she isn't having it. But
yes.
Trevor's in the bathroom and he's like on the toilet. He's just sitting there and he's crying about Helen.
Crying for what?
Right, like he's the one that cheated
on her. Not only were you cheating on her, you were treating her like shit. And I just want to mention Stacy, homegirl, You needed a bra really, really bad because I could see them nipples.
She was just not. Stacy was not it during this.
I'm
So
just saying it.
she's like talking to him a little bit, but he's being super
Come
dry.
Come help me with the salad. And he's like, just a minute.
And so she gets all mad about that, and she's literally ripping the steak up and just chunking it into a bowl, like where she's about to cook it. And so then it flashes to Trevor in the bathroom.
Crying his eyes out.
He's crying. He's at the sink, and he looks up in the mirror, and he's crying, and he's like, oh, Helen. And
Helen.
he keeps saying it like that, like he's crying, and he ends up saying it.
He says it 4 times. He says it 4 times. And then he turns off the light and says her name a 5th time. And at first, nothing really happens. But then it starts flashing. The bathrooms just starts flashing. And there's Helen over there with that was Candyman's hook that they gave to her in her casket.
And she's holding it.
She's holding Candyman's hook, and she says her line of, "What's the matter, Trevor? Scared of something?"
And she's all burned, like looks so creepy. She's in this like white gown, and she's burned. Her head is burned. And then it flashes. She slashes Trevor up.
Yes, and Stacy's right outside the door. She hears the screaming, and she's like, "Trevor? Trevor?" And she opens up the door, and guess what? His ass has been gutted. He's all bloodied up. He's in the tub. He big dead. She's up there looking stupid as fuck, holding a butcher's knife on top of that. And it's like, bitch, you about to be framed now. You're about to be framed for this murder.
Right.
Because no one else was home.
And so after this murder, it flashes to another concrete slab that kind of it looks like it has the picture of
It was
her.
the concrete slab that he was sleeping on. In
Yes,
his sort of like
and
lair.
it looks like it has her portrait over it.
Yes, I believe someone did put her portrait over it. And then the credits just start rolling over the slab with the mural in the background.
So the reason we think they thought that she was still like she was the one who committed the murders is because Candyman was framing her to have her eventually become a roomer with him and live on to be quote-unquote immortal, because she looked just like his lover that he was killed for. And so that's why she's on the concrete slab now, and she comes back if you say Helen 5 times, and now she's the next big serial killer rumor, urban legend.
But also, this has me kind of confused because I have seen the sequels after this, because there's the 2 sequels and then there's the direct sequel from 2021. I have seen all of them, and not including the 2021 one because that one is garbage. Sorry, not sorry. But the next 2, he is still technically like quote unquote alive. Like his rumor is still going. So I'm like,
is Helen alive too?
No, Helen's not in the next ones. And so I'm like, okay.
She could have just been getting her revenge on Trevor. But
yeah, and see, that's what I've always thought. I'm like, she hated Trevor's bitch ass so much that he deserved to die. So whenever he said her name, she was like, surprise, motherfucker, I'm here. I'm gonna kill your ass. Karma.
Right. So it could be either one depending on the sequels, but I think it's really cool if it's like she's the lover, and so now she has to carry on the legacy and be the legend and be the one who shows up if you say Helen 5 times.
In a way, I kind of want a Helen Candyman movie. Like,
yes,
that would be
needs
really
to be
cool.
both of them on 2 concrete slabs,
man.
and they are both awakened.
Oh man,
that would be crazy.
Fire. That would be so fire.
Clive, write something about that.
Right? And so, ending this, if you had to give this between 1 and 10 rating, what would you give it? Just overall. Unless you want to do a breakdown. I can make up some categories real quick.
Right, we could make up some categories.
Okay. So, categories will be acting, score and cinematography, characters, plot, and overall.
Okay,
I need to write that down.
1 to 10, I'm giving characters 10 and acting, because let's be real, Tony Todd killed that. I hate Trevor, but the guy who played him portrayed it exactly like it was in the short story. He was just this nuisance, ungrateful husband who didn't give a crap about anybody. And the acting was it was great. The girl who played Helen killed it. Score 100 out of 10. The score was amazing. Cinematography, I'm going to give like a 6 just because it's older. The CGI are awful and just some things like that. Like there's one time when Helen gets a shot and it looks like the needle literally just slides to the side. It was
literally
so
bent
bad.
into her skin, yeah.
But
overall,
the score was 10 out of 10. The movie, I'm giving I have to give 10 just because of how complex and like romantic the story was. It's definitely one of my favorites that I've seen because just the whole story is just so intriguing and it leaves so many ends where you could like have so many different conspiracies and I love that. Like it's a good overall story. The score is amazing, the acting is amazing, love the characters. It's a 10 for me.
And so for me, for the actors, I'm going to give it a freaking 10 because I personally could not imagine these, like the actors themselves, like not being them. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
Instead, I read somewhere that they were going to cast Eddie Murphy instead of Tony Todd. And I just could not see that happening. You know what I'm saying? Eddie Murphy's too much of a funny guy to have such a serious role as a murderous legend. So I'm going to give actors 10 out of 10. The characters themselves, I'm going to give an 8 because like Candyman, amazing. Bernadette, amazing. Helen was kind of a dumb bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like
right.
she kind of got herself into that in a way. I'm not victim blaming or anything, but she did kind of get herself into that.
But
Trevor
then she did
was a
save
bitch.
the baby, and
yeah,
she did
save the baby and everything. She escaped. Well, she didn't really escape because she died, but
true, but
you know, she saved the baby and everything. And then Trevor's a bitch. Stacy's a bitch. Benjamin Franklin is a bitch, and so it's like
we don't like her friends or anything.
No. But Helen, you all right. Tony Todd and Bernadette, y'all are my favorites.
Score and cinematography?
I'm giving both of those. Well, okay, I'm going to give the score like a million out of 10 because that score.
Good.
I was telling Hannah about the score before I even like talked more about the movie. I was just like, dude, there's this movie. It's called Candyman, and the score of it, dude.
She really did.
Oh, and
if you don't watch the movie, at least listen to the soundtrack, and I promise you're already gonna have chills.
Yes,
it's so good.
Like literally, just look up on YouTube opening credits Candyman 1992, and just that right there gives you chills. Like I have the music is playing in my head right now, and it's just so good.
Scary. It's like creepy, but also like you can tell that the composer wrote it like romantically and psychologically scary. Like it has the perfect flow and amount of like, oh, it's just so good. Go listen to it.
Cinematography, I am gonna give it about a 7. Because like you said, some of the special effects was a little but I do keep in mind that it was 1992. And so, yeah, I'm going to give that a 7. And then, overall, wait, I feel like there was another one.
Plot.
Oh, the plot. Yes, the plot. I'm giving the plot a 10 because that plot, yes, that's all I have to say. Yes, it was a great plot. I don't feel like there were too many plot holes or anything. Like, I don't have a lot of questions. Of course, I have conspiracies, but question-wise, I don't have any questions. Overall, I'm giving it a motherfucking 10. It deserves a 50. Like, it deserves an infinite amount.
Yes, it does.
Because this movie, like I said, I've seen this movie so many times, and it will always have, like, the most special place in my heart out of all horror movies because of the actors, the characters, the score,
because
the
of
cinematography, and because of course Tony motherfucking Todd. Like
Tony, please hit her up. This is bad. It's a problem.
Hit my line, Tony. I know you're probably like the age of my dad, but like that's fine. That's fine. I love you still.
I mean, he retweeted your post.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
yeah. Hey,
you're already in there.
There's a chance. And so, thank you guys so much for coming on this Candyman journey with us.
Moral of the story, you have to watch Candyman and listen to the soundtrack. And Tony, please hit my girl up.
Yes, and if you guys want to watch this, I personally rented it through Redbox. It was $3.99. I believe it's on Amazon and maybe like Vudu or something, but it's not. Unfortunately, it's not on YouTube. You can't rent it through YouTube. It's not on Netflix or Hulu or anything like that. So you do have to pay some money for it.
But it's worth it.
It's definitely worth it. I can say we are not going to be watching the sequels to this. I
don't want to be disappointed.
The first two sequels, yeah, Tony Todd's in them, but like them storylines, I can't do it unless y'all just really, really want us to watch them, and you can get our firm opinion on it.
Right.
And then the 2021 version, I watched it one time and it was not my cup of tea. So next, we are going to be watching People Under the Stairs. Oh, yeah. This was Wes Craven after like Hills Have Eyes and everything. I think he did Hills Have Eyes. I know he did Last House on the Left. So this is Wes Craven after Last House on the Left and before Scream, the iconic Scream, which we're going to be getting to week after next. And so
if you watch nothing else, watch those. They're iconic.
Yes. Catch People Under the Stairs. I know it's on Tubi right now, I believe. So maybe y'all can keep up with what we're watching.
Just watch it to get ready.
Yes, watch it to get ready. And we will, like Hannah said, be discussing that next week. Catch us on all of our social media platforms.
We have the link in our bios. We have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
YouTube. Yes, we're also on YouTube if you guys want to subscribe. And yeah, be sure to give us a follow, give us a rating. We would very much appreciate it.
To all of the people who have already followed and been listening, thank you. We really appreciate it.
so much. Y'all are my favorites.
So we will be back next week with People Under the Stairs.
Bye.